This is the Lockpicker 1969, and welcome to my channel. And welcome to today's episode of Interview with a Lockpicker. Today's guest is Pugs of Pugs Picks Locks. Say hello, Pugs.
Hey y'all, I'm so honored to be here and thank you very much for having me on.
Yeah, you're very welcome. So we've you and I had a chance to talk at length before this interview.
Mhm.
I was hoping to share some of the things that I found very interesting that I think our listeners would be very interested to hear about. So, how long would you say you've been into lockpicking?
Um that's a little bit of a long story. I actually started picking locks when I was a kid in the 70s and 80s. I think I was about 12 years old when I had read a book about Harry Houdini. And in the book, it talked about how Houdini had he would hang out in a locksmith shop down the street from the apartment building that he grew up in. And by the time he was 10, he could pick every lock in the shop. And I think I was about 12 at the time. And I was like, damn, I'm like 2 years behind on my personal development here. So, so I grew up in Chicago, and those big street sweeper trucks, that's a tongue twister, street sweeper trucks, the bristles on them are spring steel, and they would break off when the trucks would go by sometimes. And so I just started collecting pieces of spring steel out of the street, and I started making a set of lock picks for myself. I'd heat them up on our stove, and I'd use pliers to bend them, and I'd use
Cool.
a sanding attachment on a drill to grind them into different shapes. So so I started teaching myself how to pick locks. Yeah, at that when I was like 12ish or something like that. And
Wow.
at the time, however, I was not exactly the most upstanding citizen. I was actually a bit of a juvenile delinquent. I got arrested quite a few times growing up, and so I picked every lock I could find. I was not following the rules of locksport in terms of not picking any locks that aren't yours or you don't have express permission to pick, etc. And I was
Okay.
definitely picking locks that were in active use. And so yeah, so
Young. You were young.
I was young and stupid. um, and like I said, I was a little bit of a juvenile delinquent, so I actually got sent off to military school, and I did a little bit of lock picking and stuff like that while I was in military school, mostly to get myself into more trouble. And then in college, I'd straighten my shit out, and I was a little bit I was much less of a delinquent then, and I kind of stopped picking locks for a long time. And then a few years ago, when the pandemic hit, um, actually it was before then, because I would keep a set of locks on my desk at work, and on long video calls or whatever, I would just do it as a fidget activity. Just keep my hands below the line of the camera, just out of frame, and I would just pick locks as I was sitting there trying to look interested. So,
I can neither confirm nor deny that I might do that in meetings myself.
right. So, so yeah, I guess I guess that was a few years before the pandemic because I retired um, a couple years a year or two before the pandemic hit. So so yeah, but it was during the pandemic that I started to dive into picking locks more actively. You know, sitting at home like everyone else, I needed something to do, and I can only do so much music and photography. So I started picking locks as well, and then over the summer, this past summer, a few months ago, I decided to start a YouTube channel, and then it's literally only been in the past few weeks that I have been pulled into, and I say pulled because there's a few people in the Locksport community who were rather insistent that I join the Locksport Discord servers and all sorts of
Sure.
other groups and stuff like that. So yeah, I've been getting roped in. I actually had no idea that there was an actual lock sport community until I'd started my channel, and then people contacted me and stuff like that.
So have you so there's the whole belt thing. Do you follow that at all?
I don't yet. I have looked into the lock list for the belts, and I'm trying. And I know that from a pure picking point of view, not I haven't built any challenge locks, or I haven't done any fabrication whatsoever. That's not exactly my skill set or my wheelhouse. So I haven't done any of that yet. But from a pure picking point of view, I'm at least a blue belt. And actually, the video that dropped on Monday, this past Monday, was a Pack Lock 98 Pro, and that's a blue belt lock. Looking at the locks, I'm like there's some Asa Abloys and everything that are higher belt locks that I think I've picked in the past, but I'm not entirely sure. So I haven't done any of the belt tests or anything like that yet. Although I think, like I said, my Monday video might qualify. But but
Sure. I mean, it's in my opinion, it was relatively easy to get up to green, and then blue was more of a challenge just because of the whole challenge lock part of it, which by the way is quite a bit of fun actually. Even my wheelhouse wasn't there either, but I kind of learned how to make my own pins and do all of that. So that was a lot of fun actually. But yeah, I think getting into purple was a bit more of a step into more difficult locks at that point.
yeah, and Lady Locks and Lock Kraken and Dependent Quarter and you have all encouraged me to start looking into building a challenge lock or two.
Cool.
Um, so it's definitely something that I plan on maybe doing. So
So
it's a definite maybe.
So I would imagine since you were, from what we talked about, you were very had very much a passion for photography and videography, and I'm assuming that transitioned really well for you into the whole YouTube universe.
Well, when I've been dragging cameras around also since I was a kid running around Hyde Park in Chicago. Um, I've always been a bit of a photographer, and then a few years before the pandemic, I started an MFA program, thinking that if that I might want to teach photography kind of as a retirement gig, because I was kind of burning out on corporate America. I'd been in IT for 25 plus years, and so I was thinking that I might want to teach, and so you kind of need, a terminal degree, a piece of paper that says you know what you're doing. So
Yeah,
I started working on an MFA in photography. It was actually interdisciplinary art, but with a photography focus. And so halfway through the grad program, I just got fed up with corporate America, and I walked away. I retired early and started a photography business. So so when I decided to start, and then the pandemic hit, right? My my grad school class was the last class to graduate before the pandemic. So um, when the pandemic hit, of course, that just kind of threw a wrench into the whole photography business and everything like that for a couple of years there. So I have all this lighting equipment. I have all these pro grade cameras and stuff like that. And so when I started the YouTube channel, it was pretty straightforward, pretty easy for me to do because I already had a lot of the gear. I already had the lighting equipment. So the production quality side of making videos, I'm actually a little bit proud of the fact that my videos look nice. Um, it's not just a cell phone on a shaky tripod type of situation, and that if they're well lit. Um, So it's nice. It's always great when you can combine interests and hobbies.
Yeah.
So photography and locksport have kind of crossed over because of the YouTube channel, and I really enjoy that. And even I have a full recording studio here in my home for music and stuff like that. So I also
Very cool.
have professional grade microphones, and so I'm able to place microphones right next to the lock, just out of frame, so you can pick up every little click and everything. And
Oh, that's
so
cool.
so yeah, the actual production of making the videos has actually turned into almost as much of as much of a hobby as picking the locks
Yep,
themselves.
with you on that one. Yep. The production is almost as fun as the content.
Yeah, it really is kind of.
Yep. No, I definitely can relate to that and understand that very well. So you had an interesting story about your where your name comes from. Can you share that a bit?
Well, okay, so my last name is hard to pronounce. It's Italian. It's Pugliese, which means it's literally means from Puglia, and Puglia is the region of Italy. That's the heel of the boot going up the coast a bit, and nobody could say that, especially when you see it spelled out, because there's a silent G in there, and in pardon me, and in Italian, a G and an L next to each other make this liquid L sound, so it's Pugliese, right? Um, and when I was in military school, we all, of course, wear name tags with our last names on it, and so everybody tended to call each other by their last names, but nobody could say it. So I was Puglisi, Pugliese, Puglace, Pugliese, Pugla, whatever, Pug, whatever. And
Yep.
eventually, people just started to shorten it to Pugs, and so I became Pugs, and so I've been Pugs since I was 14 years old. And then when I enlisted when I was 17, in between my junior and senior year of high school. And when I enlisted, and I was sent to Fort Leonard Wood for basic training, and I got an entry level separation. I got ELS'd for medical reasons during basic, so I never got to serve. Unfortunately, that's one of my only major regrets in life. But during basic, I had a drill sergeant, Sergeant Strunk, Sergeant First Class Strunk, actually. He he actually eventually gave up on trying to say my name altogether. He just called me Portuguese, and I have no idea where how he got Portuguese from Pugliese, other than they both have a P in them. But he'd be like, "Portuguese, get your ass up here!" And I'd be like, "That's Pugliese, Sarge." "That's what I said, Portuguese. Now get your ass moving." So, you know, it's just and so in the Army, also in basic, my very brief stint in basic training, I also got shortened to Pugs or Portuguese, even though
Wow.
I look not Portuguese whatsoever.
So with your you've been picking a long time, so
Mm-hmm.
you've probably had the opportunity to try many different tools, including making your own. What would you say as a lockpicker you lean towards?
So my favorite, my absolute favorite pick in the world is it's the pagoda hook from Southord. It's a shallow hook and with a pointed end. It's kind of a sharp, pointy thing, and and I love that pick. Even though it's a little on the shallow side, and so I sometimes have to swap it out for deeper hooks when, especially if you have some wicked peaks and valleys in the bidding. But the I love it because it with the point on that particular tool, you can feel the space in between the pins like precisely. And so then it's just a matter of moving, a couple millimeters to get on top of a pin. And so it really helps me feel my way through a lock and know exactly where I am. And so that particular pick is absolutely 100% hands down my favorite pick. Every time I attack a new lock, that's the tool that I grab, along with this little Z wrench that I have for tension. And the Z wrench was made from a bicycle spoke, and and it's
I just started playing with making tension wrenches out of bicycle spokes myself, so
yeah. Well,
I
this
can.
one, it's because of you have the hammered out flat bit. On one end
Yep.
is perpendicular to the shaft, and on the other end it's like
Yeah.
parallel with the shaft, so I can use it for top or bottom of the keyway tension. And honestly, every single lock in my collection, um, I can attack with that Z wrench.
Yeah.
And and quite frankly, like after I pop a lock, I will grab the pagoda hook. Like if I had to switch out to a different tool, I'll grab the pagoda hook and I will make it work. I will pick that lock over and over and over again once I figured it out, until I can open it with the pagoda hook. And I've only failed on a couple of locks in terms of that. So
Wow. Cool. Um, what is the one lock you would consider to be your nemesis?
um so for a while, I've been able to open every single Master Lock 410 I've ever touched. Every single Loto that I've ever picked up, I've been able to open, except for one. That damned lock stymied me for like a month. I just could not get it, and the bidding on it was horrible. The pin 5 to 6 transition was just ridiculous. Um, but it just it was so incredibly frustrating because I can open a 410. You know, it's like one of those things. I know I can do this. Damn it. And then when I finally did get it, when I finally did pop it, I managed to over rotate the core and I rattled it.
Oh,
The very first time I opened it, I rattled it. So, but the nice thing about running a YouTube channel and is that then became content. I then cracked open the body, and I made a video out of
yep.
cracking open the body and gutting a
Ah,
410.
yep.
So
Hey, never waste a tragedy.
exactly. So I have a great video on how to bust open a 410 Loto and gut it and then reassemble it, because I ended up reassembling it and gluing it back together so that I could still pick it, just to prove to it who the boss is, right?
Exactly. All right. So, last question I have for you. Have you ever had the doldrums? And if you have, how long did they last for? And how did they affect you? And were you better when you came out of them?
So, uh, I mean, you could say that the period from all the way through my 20s through my mid 30s was the doldrums. I don't think I touched a single lock in that entire time frame. Um, no, that's not true. I did get us into our house when we locked ourselves out once or twice.
Okay.
But yeah, I didn't. That period, it was just. It wasn't so much that I'd lost my touch with locks, or that I was burnt out with locks or anything like that. It was more that I was busy, trying to make a marriage and a career work. I was, I spent 25 plus years in IT, and I was competing with people who think in ones and zeros, and my degree is creative writing, comparative religions, literary studies, and a minor in psychology and a minor in dance, right? So I'm not an IT person. I fell into
Yeah.
IT very accidentally,
Yeah.
as I think a lot of people my age who ended up in IT, I think that's the case for many of us. We didn't mean to. We just kind of got there. And so I was working so hard, trying to keep up with these guys who think in ones and zeros, and I was going after these certifications, and I was studying and blah 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 blah. So that, and you know, I think life just in general. Plus, music is a big thing for me, and plus, I was also with my photography interest, I was TAing photography classes at a local college, and etc. So it just kind of fell by the wayside for a little while. Um, and when I came back to it, I couldn't open a darn thing. I couldn't. I mean, it was lock picking is a perishable skill. If you
Yeah,
don't
definitely.
if you don't use it,
Yeah.
it starts to fade. So when I came back, it was almost like starting over again. I had a um, when I came back to it, part of it was my great aunt had passed away, and so I inherited some stuff from her estate. One of them was this beautiful antique desk, rosewood and leather top, And in the desk were two Abus 5540s, and
Oh,
and I remember sitting trying to pick them open, sitting next to my wife watching TV, and I was like, I don't understand it. When I was a kid, I could get into anything. I could, like, there was nothing that stopped me, and here I am. I can't even feel the pin states in this thing. In either one of them, I can't even feel the pin states. I have no idea what's going on inside this lock. So it really was a bit like starting over.
yeah. Well, I want to thank you. This has been great. I've really enjoyed talking with you and getting to know you. And by all means, if any of our listeners have additional questions they'd like to ask, if they put them in the comments, if you don't mind, kind of keeping an eye out, and if you're willing to answer questions people have, that would be awesome.
Oh, I'm so happy to engage with people. Engaging with people in the comments on my videos is one of my favorite things, honestly. And so I'm more than happy to engage with them in the comments of your videos as well. Yeah, absolutely.
Great, thank you. So I'm going to wrap this one up. Again, for those listening, if you know someone or you'd like yourself would be interested in being interviewed, by all means, please get in touch with me. You can reach me by email at thelockpicker1969 at gmail.com. Or if you know somebody you'd like to see interviewed, please suggest that in the comments. And everybody that is similarly interested, by all means, react to that post, and we'll see what we can do to try and influence that person to be willing to be interviewed.
Yeah.
Please, by all means, hit the subscribe button, turn on notifications and all, so you're made aware of new content as it comes out. And again, Pugs, thank you so much for this interview, and I appreciate the time you've spent with me.
Hey, thanks a lot for having me. This has really been a blast. So I really appreciate you. Thank you.
All right, thank you, and thank you everybody that tuned in.